Welcome to the Scottish Watches podcast, a very special edition of the show. We have teased it for weeks, months, if not years, but finally the day has come. We are going to talk about watches that you can potentially have on your wrist by becoming part of our charity watch auction for Maggie's. And we have a couple of very special people on the show, me and Sarah, but Dave's here as well, so don't worry about that. But we're going to actually get Sarah to talk a little bit, first of all, about the charity. If you don't know who Sarah is, she's been on the show a number of times in the past, co-hosted, she's done interviews. We've taken the piss out of her a little bit because that's what we do here on Scottish Watches, but she's here to right those wrongs and to explain all about this fantastic opportunity for people to raise money for an amazing cause and also get some amazing wristwatches on their wrist. So first of all, we'll say hello to Dave. Hello, Dave.
Hello, Ricky. How are we?
We are well, and then we'll move straight to Sarah because we want to get through all these timepieces as quickly as possible. So how are things going, Sarah?
Good. Thank you for having me on again.
Do you want to tell people a little bit about, first of all, yourself, and then tell us about the auction, and we'll get straight into it, and we'll jump between all the different brands that have become involved in this. We have recorded individual segments, so you'll hear from the likes of Anordain, Bamford, Studio Underdog, William Wood, and all the rest of the great guys and girls that have been involved in this process. So first of all, quick introduction from yourself for new listeners, new audience members that perhaps have never seen or heard from you before, and then we'll get straight into business.
So yeah, as you said, Ricky, I've been on the show a couple of times co-hosting. Most recently, we spoke to Hairspring Watches, Eric Gustafsson, together. And I've been in the industry for about 12 years. I started out with jewellery and then I moved over to watches. So I work for an auction house, Lion in Turnbull, and we do 4 auctions a year. And recently came up with the idea of having this charity auction. We do a lot of charity sales through my work for various causes, and we chose Maggie's as actually last year's auction charity kind of recipient. But as Ricky said, there's been a lot of delays, and it's only now that we're able to actually put the sale on. So delighted to be doing it for Maggie's. Maggie's are an excellent charity. They have sort of cancer care centres across the UK, and the auction will be specifically benefiting the Glasgow and Edinburgh centres and the work that they do supporting patients and their families.
So we're here with Lewis from Anordain, another of the very kind people and companies that have donated watches to our auction. Now, both of these are a little unusual in as much as the Pollen is a prototype watch, so it's something that may or may not ever become a production model. And the Anordain is something quite special. So maybe if we go in alphabetical order and start with the Anordain, maybe if you can give us a little background, what is this piece that is being made available at the auction?
Yeah, sure. So the Anordain is, the case and the hands are a small Model 1, so 35mm Model 1. The dial is really interesting because this came about, we had a contact from tailor called Caroline Andrew, who's a Scottish tailor working in London, and she got in touch a couple of years ago and just said she liked what we did, and we had a chat and kind of got on well. And then a year or two later, she got in touch and said, "Can I buy one of your watches? Because I've got this this book, as I think it's the Mr. Porter book on a person of the watch. I don't actually know what it's called. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So anyway, she's asked to be featured in a book about watches, but she didn't have a watch and she wanted to buy one of ours. And I thought it'd be interesting to make her one because we were always kind of rammed with production, and it's fun to explore new things. So we got talking about her processes, and one of the things with tailoring in that's peculiar to Savile Row is they use horsehair as a body for the suit. So they have this really coarse horsehair that's woven into a fabric with cotton. And when they stitch it, they use the palm of their hands, they kind of cup their hands, and that warms it and molds it into a particular style. And I was really interested by this. So we got some of it up here in the studio, and the jewelers who would kind of treat it like linen and roll it through a press with silver or gold or different materials underneath it, and that would imprint onto it. And then we enameled on top of it. And it came up with some really interesting aesthetics. But what was really fun about it is we realized that when you look at the dial and then turn it round, it changes completely. So we think the reason for this is that you have the very very deep parallel horsehair lines on one axis. Then perpendicular to that, you have these very faint cotton waves. And every time you roll this to create the dial, the fabric gets destroyed. It gets completely torn apart. So that the cotton sort of skews all over the place, but the horsehair stays in place. So it gives us this really interesting optical illusion of having one design and then we turn it sideways. It's got completely different texture. So it's, it was an accident, and we've never seen anything like that before. So that was really interesting, and that's kind of why you do projects like that. I mean, it wasn't we didn't, it was an experimental thing for us rather than a commission. We just said it'd be good to do. And then this dial on the watch that we've donated was actually the dial for her. But I'd gone down to London and met up with her a week or two before, and she hadn't seen it yet. But it came out in the conversation that the only color that she doesn't like is purple, and the dial is purple. So we'd spent 6 months working on this, and I had to phone up the workshop and tell them that we might have to make another one. So it's a really nice dial. It was going to be the one, but it's purple. It's not really purple. I mean, it's just got aspects. So it's not kind of bright purple or anything.
Having seen it, I would definitely say it's certainly got lilac-y, purpley hues to it for sure. And I can completely agree with what you say about this optical illusion in terms of both myself and Ricky have seen this. And as you rotate it, you can definitely see that change from a kind of wavy nature, quite delicate, to quite a pronounced linear pattern. So if you like this, check out the pictures. The pictures do a fair amount of justice, but definitely try and get to see it in person at some of the showings if you want to get a good feel for it. And her dislike of purple is to the benefit of somebody, because purple is definitely becoming a colour of popularity in the watch circles of the last couple of years. So if you want a piece unique in purple with a very, very unique enamel dial, then this is the one. So maybe then quickly on to Pollen. And this one is a watch that you actually showed me a good while back as an idea you were having. And I remember falling in love with it when I saw it. So maybe give everyone a little quick overview of this specific Pollen watch.
Yeah, this was an interesting watch because this was the follow-up to the Neo. And we bought a batch of ETA 956s, which are quartz movements in the late 90s. They're really, really kind of gold and deep blue on the back of them. And we thought we'd like to use these in a watch. But there's only, I think, 200 of them. And to make a case, you've got to make 500 or 600. So we designed a case that had an aspect of modularity to it. So you can kind of, there's a sort of sealed unit with a crown in it, which will slot into the rest of the case and then screw in from the sides. And so we could buy 500 or 600 cases to make it an affordable watch, and then have a slightly different inner section. So what we've done with this is that it's not got the quartz movement in it. It's got the ETA 7001. It's obviously a very well-known old movement. It's very slim. So that watch has got this in, and it doesn't, like, this looks completely different. This is one of the ones that's actually going to launch. They're much more brightly coloured and kind of in keeping with Pollen's aesthetic. But this dial came through as a kind of, I think, a machining proof. The dials get blanked in Germany, and everyone was just like, this is a really nice aesthetic, but it's completely different to anything that's going to come out.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say it's got a kind of undertone stealthy aspect to it. Very little in the way of printing on the dial. It's almost like a kind of blank dial. It's like a blank canvas, and in quite an unusual, my colour descriptions are never great, but I would say it's verging towards a military green kind of colour on it.
Yeah, it's definitely got that going on, I think.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much for coming on, and thanks again so much for the donation of the two watches. I think if anyone wants to, let's say, skip the queue, so to speak, for Anordain, then this might be one of the few rare opportunities to actually get your hands on one, certainly for the next good few years. As Lewis mentioned, their production is pretty much sold out for the next 5 years. So you can maybe get one early, get a piece unique, and get one that puts a lot of money to good causes as well. And the Pollen, have to say, it's one of my favourites in the auction. So if you like the idea of something a bit funky and a bit different, and both of them are on the smaller end of the size spectrum for the watches in the auction as well. So if you prefer something slightly smaller, definitely get a look at the Anordain or the Pollen. So thank you very much, Lewis, and back to the show.
Thanks.
Always good to hear from Lewis at Anordain / Pollen, as they're now a sub-brand of the same company. And next we're going to speak to George Bamford. You have probably seen his face a million times before, all over the internet, all over YouTube. He's been on the podcast a number of times, but here he is to quickly tell us in low resolution, because we managed to steal him away from his holiday destination with really bad Wi-Fi and no real good internet connection. But here he is to tell us all about the prototype watch that you can get a hold of.
So this is totally a unique watch. It actually is a prototype, but it is a unique watch. So I am wearing the brand new, this is the sports edition, brand new Bamford 80. I do not have the prototype. You asked me for something special. You asked me for something you were asking me for something, and I was just like, this is the watch that I was creating for me. It's not for anyone else. This was my watch. And basically, I haven't got that watch. I've given it to you for the auction. And that is, it's got a record dial. It is black titanium case. It's our very successful Bamford 80 with this record dial, with the wonderful color combinations of that gold, blue, and it works so well together. And those hands, they are the hands that are from the heritage. They're not. So each bit is kind of like picked out of different watches that we created in the Bamford 80. And that dial with, basically, it's got these wonderful circles, and it just kind of creates, and I call it a record dial, but it's just little lines in the dial. And it's just something that we were playing around with. And it was one of the prototype dials. And I basically went yoink and picked it as my dial. We basically had a whole set of wonderful dials coming from our Swiss manufacturer. And I was just like, oh my God, I love that dial. And then I did it. And we haven't replicated it because I didn't order any more. I only ordered this one dial as the prototype. And so basically it is truly unique. And that's what I love about it. And we haven't done a black case on the Bamford 80 yet. That will be coming. That's the only thing I will say to you is we are going to be doing a black case. So that's not the unique thing. The dial, the hands, the strap, everything else, the combination of the Bamford 80 is unique and will never be done again.
Yes, it does remind me of my DJing days and having to hump around multiple crates of vinyl to different gigs. That's what it gives me the impression of. I'm a kid of the 80s and the 90s. I love it, and I know it's going to do extremely well. I'm not going to hold you up too much longer. I'm just going to say thank you once again for getting involved, George, and be sure to check in to see how the auction is going. And afterwards, we'll be catching up, probably in a few weeks' time over in Geneva. So have a great holiday, and we'll catch you soon.
Thank you so much, and thank you. And please, yes, please, everyone, bid as much as you can. I know I'm going to be waiting almost like one of those cats holding on to those posters, holding on and going, please, I'm going to be waiting with expectations, and this is such a great cause. So thank you so much. And thank you for getting me back on.
You'll be back on for far longer than 5 minutes when you get back your holidays. Don't you worry. It's been over half a year. We make promises. We stick to promises. You're going to be back on. Don't you worry.
You rock. Thank you so much. And thank you to everyone who's been a part of this. This is really, really a great cause.
So next we're going to hear from Mike France at Christopher Ward about his contribution, which is the Highlander.
Hey Mike, good to have you with us. We're here to talk about one specific watch and for a very specific good cause. And that is one watch from our limited edition run of the Christopher Ward Scottish Watches Highlander. So do you want to tell us about the model that this was based on and the differentiations between that and the Highlander, and then this watch for every watch, which is a piece unique?
Yeah, by all means, Ricky. I mean, it's now more than 2 years ago, I think, since we started talking with you guys about creating what became known as the C63 Highlander, which was based on our 39mm Sealander watch, which we'd introduced not long prior to that. And the the Highlander, I think you insisted on 69 pieces, if I'm not mistaken, Ricky. But so the every watch, which is a version of a unique version of the Highlander, takes that number up to 70 in a sense, because this is as with the other watches that you're doing under the every watch name for Maggie's. This is 01 of 01. So this is a completely unique watch, which, given the reaction we had to the 69, I think there's going to be a pretty long queue of people wanting to bid for this watch, because the Highlander, which was genuinely designed in conjunction primarily with you and David, we remain very proud of it. I'm actually wearing the prototype sample here today, and it is a stunning watch. Some of the interesting things I think we did with that watch, and which carry over onto the every watch version, we quite famously went Twin Flags logo only. It was our swoosh moment. But and I think this was, I can't remember whose idea it was. It may have been yours, it may have been David's.
Definitely wouldn't have been David's.
Definitely not David's, okay. We decided to retain the 4 dots element of the second flag, but instead of having the Swiss flag, have a Scottish saltire as the first part of the logo. And so we rotated the logo. And that's, of course, carried forward onto the every watch. Other things that we did differently on the lacquered dial, that we printed into that, the repeating logo in very fine sort of print, which you can only see when you interrogate the watch very closely. It's one of those lovely surprises that you get. You know, we all love those little things, don't we, that keep surprising us about any watch. Yeah, you call them Easter eggs. Brilliant description, I think. And that's one of the Easter eggs. And then on the back of the of the watch, we went for the sapphire crystal exhibition case back, but printed the saltire onto that in blue as well. So it's quite a unique version of the Sealander anyway, with quite a number of variations against it. And then for every watch, we have printed the every watch logo at 6 o'clock, and also engraved every watch and the 01/01 onto the case back. So this is I think a brilliant reinterpretation of what was a great watch to create with you guys, and I think has become a very highly sought after item, if I'm not mistaken.
You're quite correct. We have people asking us now and again if they can still get a hold of one, and we have to pass them on to the secondary market, where very few appear. I've only ever seen 2 or 3 in the last year and a bit, so that is pretty good going. People do enjoy them. We still get emails from listeners and now viewers who wear them and send us wrist shots from across the world when people are on holiday, when people are at home in the States, Australia, Germany, it could be anywhere. So it has been very successful. And we want to say a big, massive thank you for, first of all, getting involved with us, as you say, over 2 years ago when the planning began. And some people think designing a watch is a 5-minute affair. We tick some boxes, we look in a catalogue. Some people do that, but we definitely did not. Everything about it, and there was more Easter eggs that we're not going to talk about just now. You'll just have to look at the pictures to see if you can spot them. But then coming on board again when we first talked about the charity auction, because this as well, this has taken a long, long time due to constraints with supply chain, the pandemic, and various other factors playing into it. But, you know, we're in the home stretch. As this episode is airing, as it appears on YouTube and in audio format, the auction is underway. And again, all the details will be in the description and on the website. So, Mike, thank you very much. And it won't be long until you're coming back on the show, because I believe there's some news happening, but we won't talk about that right now.
No, we mustn't talk about that right now. But delighted to come back at any time.
Well, listen, I appreciate the time, appreciate the watch, and stay tuned to find out how well it does. Catch you later.
Cheers.
And now we're going to hear from the ever-present Nicholas, someone who's been on the podcast many times before as well. He's going to tell us all about the Fears piece unique that's been put together with many of the ideas that he's been wanting to put in a watch but has never quite got round to it until this watch.
Yes, you're right. I've been on the show but audio only, so this is a new one for me. I've I had to make sure I had a facial or two to try and freshen myself up, knowing that the audience will actually see me for once.
So that brings us to the auction, and as many people may have seen if they have sharp eyes, on the wall behind you is pictures of all of the different watches that are going to be in the auction that's coming up for every watch. Now, you kindly hosted, or I should say Fears hosted, the tour of the watches just last week down at your facility in Bristol, and kindly Richard, who is your right hand man I believe, was kindly on hand to make sure that Sarah was looked after and all the guests could have a look at the watches. So we do want to thank you for that, for allowing people in the further southern reaches of our country to have a look at the watches before they finally go on display in Glasgow before the auction. So thank you again for that.
No, you're very welcome. It was wonderful to not only see how Richard and the rest of the Fears team came together to make the event happen. As you said, I wasn't actually at the event. Sadly, I wasn't able to attend. But from everything I saw on Instagram, I mean, that's always the best barometer, right? If you see lots of people posting about it on the stories, then you know it was a good event. But also the feedback we've had since then. I think for me, it's a very important thing because we don't, as a company, we don't do discounts, we don't do sales, we don't gift watches. The only time, though, we make an exception to that is when we donate watches for charity purposes. And, right at the start, when looking at the Every Watch auction, this was something that was very close to my heart. I wanted to do this. In fact, one of my good school friends actually works for the auction house, and she sadly has cancer. So it feels very pertinent to be, doing as much as we possibly can beyond, donating a watch, building a one-off piece that we'll talk about in a moment. But for me, realizing, I'm very lucky that Fears has this lovely place in Bristol. We have our showroom here. But actually, let's get the Fears watches out of the display cases. Let's take the Fears artwork down from the walls and let's convert it for a week. And over the past week, we've also been hosting private appointments, private viewings for people to come and see the watches and get a better idea of what's going to be available. And fundamentally, we all want to see as much as possible raised for Maggie's as we can.
Absolutely. And I can remember you were very much one of the first people that we approached when it came to the idea for this auction. So I remember personally speaking to you. I can even remember where I was. It was one of those marked memories. I was walking through Covent Garden in London, heading towards where I was laying my head for the evening, and I was on the phone to you for a considerable period of time talking about the idea for the auction, why we wanted to do it, what our kind of methodology was, and you were very engaged and instantly were very much, yep, I'm for that, absolutely, count me in. So on that front then, let's talk a little bit about the watch that is going in. Obviously, it's a Brunswick, which is possibly the model that your brand is most well known for at this point in time. But tell us a little bit more about the watch and the little bits that make it that piece unique.
Certainly. So the watch, let me see if I can do this correctly, is this one here, which is a piece unique. It is a one of one of our Fears Brunswick 38mm piece. Now, we have, since 2017, we have built custom watches. We have a Fears custom division. So building one-off watches is something that we do for a few people every year. And I believe yourself, you are a proud owner of one of the watches created by this division. However, I personally have never commissioned a watch yet from my very own division. And so for me, I thought, actually, with this, what if I was to say, well, what would be the Brunswick 38mm that I would like to make? Something that we wouldn't put into the regular production, but is something that I would absolutely love. And so therefore, you're looking something a bit more left field, slightly different colorway, different textures. And for me, it was the ice blue. Now, as I mentioned before, I've spent 5 years working at Rolex, and I'm very lucky to handle one or two of their platinum day dates and Daytonas with the platinum exclusive ice blue. Now, sadly, this Brunswick isn't in platinum, but that color, that shade of ice blue. Now, I always felt the Rolex shade was a little cold. So when we were developing ours, we made sure it had a little more blue, a little more life to it, which has been brought to life with the sunburst finish dial And though people will go, oh, it's on a bracelet, what's special about that? The bracelet on this watch has completely different finishing. So it's a very, very unique watch. This really is a one of one, and very much me saying, right, there's no expense being spared. We will go for custom hands, a custom dial, custom engraving, custom bracelet. Let's really push the boat out and see what the Fears custom division can do and create. And so, I will be honest, I am a little sad that I don't actually get to own this watch at the end of it. But for me, it's very exciting to see this watch amongst the other 8 very strong lots. And, hopefully this watch will find its way to an owner who not only is supporting a great cause, but also shares the same love of an ice blue Brunswick as I do.
I think that was a great explanation there about the kind of thought and the processes that you put into this watch. And it is a personal thing for you. It's not just about, let's do a watch that's a one-off. Let's actually put some thought into it and put a little bit of Nicholas into this watch, as well as the bit of Fears into it as well. So thank you very much for commissioning this piece and having this piece put together. I'm sure it's going to be one of the pieces in the auction that garnishes the most attention, as it's fair to say there's quite a few rabid Fears fans around the world who will be looking to get their hands on this pretty unique piece. Not even pretty unique, completely unique piece, shall we say. So thank you very much, Nick, for coming on and giving us a little bit of background about yourself and Fears, and of course about the watch in the auction. And thanks again for hosting, and we will catch up with you soon. So back to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So next up, we're going to hear from Juicy Isotope about a special one-of-one Alba.
So tell us a little bit about the watch, maybe what it's called first, and a little bit of the backstory of why that came to be.
The watch is the Alba. The Alba came up, so it's an homage to the Scottish flag. And at the same time that we were discussing an eventual collaboration, I went to take my daughter to Scotland, and I was in the ferry, and the sea, the flag, it all came together. I think I had a vision. It's beautiful to say this, but I could see on the watch the Scottish flag. And so we opted to create a black bezel with a very discreet blue droplet that represents the pip to time, if you need to time something. But it's almost invisible, because the idea was to make the watch or the bezel as a frame of the dial, with white enamel and blue with the colors of the Scottish flag, and something that is not very common on divers. The watch has blue heated hands, and under the sun it looks just unbelievable. So all this is packaged in a sandblasted case with 40 millimeters and 22 millimeters lug on the lugs. So it's 40 millimeters case with 48 long, which suits almost every wrist. The lugs are 22 millimeters and it's 14 millimeters high, because this is a diver. So in the crystal is sapphire, the bezel is sapphire, the case back is open, and it's also sapphire. And we can see in this version, so in all the versions that we did with you guys, it's a closed case back. That took us some work to do, but for the limited edition or for the unique edition, we used an open case back where we can see the highly decorated Landeron 24, and the rotor, it's engraved only watch piece unique, basically. So that makes it a very unique offer, because none of the other 99 watches have this kind of presentation. Let's see. So it's very normal in the front, if you can consider a diver watch with blue heated hands normal. But in the case back, that's where we make it different from anyone else.
Thank you very much. Jose, thank you for donating the watch and also for coming on and lending some of your time to us to explain the watch to the people. So let's get on with the show.
Thank you.
Next up, we have got a late entrant to the auction. Somebody who, I don't know how it happened, it was just magic. It was pure universal magic, the fact that this all came to be. But on the show, we have got Armand from Sartory Billard, and he's here to tell us a little bit about himself, his watchmaking, and how he came to produce this one-off piece for the auction. So how are you doing, Armand? I believe you're on holiday, that's why you're in a car.
Hello, Ricky. Yes, I'm in holiday in the south west of France. There is no network there. Perfect place for family holidays, so the kids don't play with the phone around. But downside, I have to drive 10 minutes to find a little bit of network to have this conversation.
Well, I'm glad that you took the time out of your busy schedule with your family on vacation. So tell us the process of coming up with the designs, what you've done with the watch.
About the charity, yes, I like to do one charity piece every year. It started 3-4 years ago, I think, and that was really on point for 2023 that Barbara and you contacted me about Maggie's project, what she does for kids with cancer, etc. And so I created the watch. I didn't want to take a regular watch and just swap a strap and just make a different engraving on the watch, especially because I'm making this bespoke creation all year round. So I took the blue color because I think that was a color, a theme color a little bit for this auction. It's also happening that it's one of the colors that I can master, doing this titanium and anodization on dies. And because I love to work with laser, because I'm a watchmaker, I'm making obviously traditional products, which are mechanical watches, but I love tech and new technology. So I'm on a daily basis using a laser to cut parts, engraving stuff. This is one of my main tools in the workshop. So I was searching for a pattern to put on the dial so it looks elegant, discreet, but has a direct, very, very direct link to Maggie's house project. And so I took the logo of this little house that is beautiful, and I made a pattern out of it, changing a little bit the direction and playing with symmetries on this. And I first of all made a dial out of titanium. I made some finishing on the die with this circular brush, finishing on the die, so it lights plays around like a CD-ROM a little bit. You have these very nice reflections on the dial.
Yeah, it reminded me of looking at perhaps a vinyl record when the light hits it in a certain way.
Yeah, absolutely. You have all these circular lines in this. And then I work on the oxide layer of the titanium to turn it sky blue, because I thought that was a color of hope. And this is, I think, all the work of this of Maggie's house, and then engrave the logo all across the dial. I think it works good because it's a very discreet, very elegant dial, and it makes it absolutely unique. And this is what I do on a daily basis for all the collectors that I'm working for.
Another informative answer done as an elevator pitch, exactly what we're after. And your watches, as we've said on the show before, each one is a unique piece. They're all one-of-ones because you work with the collector, the customer, the enthusiast, on how their specific watch is designed, put together, the colours, the materials, the finishing, right down to the strap, the case back. And everyone has seen the pictures of your watch because it has been included in all the imagery that we put around. They'll be seeing it just now in the show notes for this episode. They'll see it in the video that we're showcasing as well. So I'm going to let you get back to your family. And thank you so much for carving out 10 minutes to drive down the road, leave all the hustle and bustle, and then speak to us today. So we'll keep you informed of how things go with the auction, and we'll catch you when you get back. So thanks a lot, Armand. We'll catch you soon.
Thank you very much, Ricky. And I will drive back home and probably jump in the pool. Holidays.
And we're here with Richard Benz from Studio Underdog. the purveyor of the brand. Now, obviously, you've done a couple of special editions along the way as well, just with the popularity. You've also done a couple of other pieces for charity, whether it's been some auctions for other people and such like as well. So they've gone well, and we thought we would approach you when we were doing Every Watch, and you very kindly didn't hesitate and said you would do it. And maybe you could give us a bit of a flavour for your thought process about the one that you've designed for us. Now, it has to be said, we gave you very little in the way of direction other than do what you think is right for you and the brand. So maybe give the listeners and the folk watching this on YouTube a bit of an overview of how you came up with the watch.
Well, you can't get a more perfect brief than that. You know, a brief that is totally open-ended and you know, given total creative control to me. Of course, I'm going to jump at that. But yeah, I've done, you know, in terms of kind of my kind of core range of products, I tend to not keep them limited. I tend to try and avoid doing limited editions or, you know, because I want customers or enthusiasts to be able to enjoy the watches. But when it comes to kind of charity projects or, you know, piece uniques for, you know, a great cause, that's when I really kind of relish the opportunity to do something a little bit different and kind of experiment with experiment with the blueprint that I'd created. So when you guys reached out, I jumped at the opportunity really. Because you two, both yourself and Ricky, have been, you know, so supportive in the, you know, from the early stages of Studio Underdog up until now, which hopefully is still the early stages. So a great opportunity for me to work with you guys. And then on top of that, for such a good cause. So yeah, it was always going to be a yes from me. And then when it came to the design process, I'd always had this idea of doing sort of, you know, using a bit more blue and blueberry as an influence. And I've noticed some of the other brands that have contributed have also gone down a blue theme. So I didn't realize, but it's quite possibly just we're linking, you know, the colours of Scotland or the Scottish flag. You know, there was no brief set yet, and we've all got this, you know, this synergy for the most part, which is kind of funny. So maybe that was, you know, unknowingly, you know, ticking along in my head.
No, absolutely. It's funny because we were very open with everybody to say, please make sure you do something you feel is honest to your brand. And as you say, many of them, albeit not all of them, many of them have gone down that kind of blue route, which I guess Scotland, the Scottish Saltire flag is probably going to be a point of reference for many people. But there we go. So you posted a picture on your social medias of this to help promote the auction as well. And I believe you got some quite solid feedback from it on there as well. So I'd like to think that many people would consider looking at the auction and possibly putting a bid in to own this special piece unique, because as you say, the vast majority of watches that you put out are not limited, and if someone wants something very special from you, then this is going to be the one that I think is going to garnish a huge amount of attention. So thank you very much, Richard, and we will speak to you soon, and let's hope that this is one of the record-setting watches in the auction.
For sure. Well, thanks for having me, and best of luck with the auction. I'll be watching, and maybe I'll be bidding on some of the other brands as well. We'll see. But, thanks for having me.
So welcome back to the show, Johnny from Williamwood. It's been a while since we've spoken properly. It's been even longer since you were last on the show, probably about a year or so. But the watch you sent to us was well in the past. You were the first, I believe, to actually send us a watch complete. Loads of people sent us raw drawings, renders, all kinds of things like that, but you were the first one to actually get the watch to us in the middle of the height of the pandemic and all the problems in the supply chain, getting this, that and the other. Pulled out all the stops, you got it to us ahead of your own customers, and we really appreciate that. So do you want to tell us about the process of coming up with the ideas for the watch, how it came to be, and is it the reason that you're wearing this fetching jumpsuit just now?
Well, first and foremost, you're bang on, Ricky. I mean, I live in France now, and this T-shirt is actually made from towel, and it's like 30 odd degrees outside, so I'm sat here sweating, so I'm dedicated to the cause to try and push this beautiful orange piece. And so it was a really cool journey actually designing this watch. And interestingly, it was only 48 hours ago that we saw all of the other brands' watches that were entered. And it was funny because obviously we didn't get the memo. Everyone went down the blue route and we've gone down the orange route. And the reason for orange is because, as the listeners know, we're actually raising the money in support of Maggie's charity, and their corporate colours were orange. And we knew that we'd never made a watch in orange previously, and also with our firefighting heritage. And if you think about just fire and flames, we thought it would be a really, really cool addition that certainly a lot of our customers would want to bid on. So what we did was we created a dial which was actually made from a sunburst orange color. And what's really cool about that is as soon as the natural light hits it, it just pops. It actually almost has that sort of faint fire-esque glow to it, which is really, really cool. And then sat underneath, it's the first time we've used orange C3 grade superluminova. So when that charges up, that looks really awesome coming through the sandwich dial. The dial and the hands are curved, and it's actually got a double dome sapphire crystal glass. So when you rotate the watch, it's got this lovely optical illusion that it creates, and it just sort of distorts the perimeter of the dial, which is really cool. We had to put, obviously, the support of every watch into the glass case back, which is a really, really cool feature. The heart of the watch is our Sellita SW200 Swiss-made movement, which is another nice addition for whoever's going to be the winner of this watch. And the straps are actually made from genuine upcycled orange fire hose, which have been donated to us from Sacramento Fire Department. So that fire hose has actually been used in real wildland fires all around California for the last 10 years. Rather than it going into landfill, it gets donated to us. We clean it, protect it. We then apply a certain heat pressure to make it supple, and we turn it into the luxury orange fire hose watch strap that you see on that one-of-a-kind piece.
Another polished presentation from Johnny at Williamwood Watches, but it is an absolute pleasure having you back on the show, albeit in a slightly smaller format, but it means that we can bring you back, we can do a proper catch-up, because it's been a long time since you were last on the show telling everyone about everything that's going on. So I will leave you to it. You look like you've just escaped out of prison with your orange jumpsuit on there, so hopefully they don't catch up with you, and be sure to keep an eye on the auction results.
Absolutely. We're excited to see what the results are, and our customers are really excited too. Thanks for the invite.
That's us heard from all of the companies and individuals that have helped to create some of these wonderful watches that are going to be in the auction. So maybe you can tell us, Sarah, a little bit about the auction itself.
So it's live right now, and you can go to the Lion & Turnbull website, which is lionandturnbull.com. It's a timed auction. It lasts for a week, and it closes at 7 p.m. British Summer Time again, which is 1 hour ahead of UTC. And you can basically leave bids. You can leave your maximum bid, and you'll be bid up to that level if necessary. So if there's an underbidder below you, it pushes you to your top bid. It's a bit like a lot of online auctions. And if you need any help with that, obviously you can contact us and we can give you a hand. But it runs for the full 7 days, and it's live now. So just to add in, if you don't want to participate in the actual bidding process, but you would still like to donate to Maggie's, you can do that through the Every Watch Just Giving page.
That sounds great. And if people want to get involved, how do they register? It's international, so don't worry, you don't have to be in the UK, you don't have to be in Glasgow or Scotland. Worldwide, you can get involved in this. What is the process for signing up?
It's quite a quick process. You just sign up on the website, Lion & Turnbull, and you can just go from there. Really straightforward. It's all quite self-explanatory.
Well, that doesn't mean a lot when me and Dave are involved, but, we'll see how we go. That is the end of our show. We are going to keep a very close eye on proceedings, and a big thank you to all the people in the press and the media and everybody that is really pushing this forward, because a lot of guys have come to bat for us who are, you could say, in competing media outlets, but they have done their best for us. They've actually advertised this. The guys at Time and Tide, Fratello, all across, and we'll be doing a thank you episode telling you exactly how the watches got on and potentially having some information from the buyers, and we hope that you are going to be one of those people. That is the end of our show. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you guys again soon.